It starts with the commitment first, getting clear on what it is that you want, no matter how big it is. Clarity and intention will lead to a commitment level. When you have this commitment level and your attention starts to be focused on that, we have insecurity, so we don't move forward. Well, insecurity stems from a lack of knowledge.
C-Roc, I'm excited to have you join me for this Coffee with Closers.
Samuel, what's happening, man? Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Love your energy, and I've been following you for quite some time. And you're a podcast host and help companies produce and promote content. So that's kind of the nature of your business offerings and things that you bring to the table. But prior to even starting this business, you've had a couple other ventures as well. So can you share with our audience a little bit about your journey of entrepreneurship and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, my first journey in entrepreneurship was I started a water treatment company. I had been in sales for a while. Back in '98, I started, and then some point in 2000, I think it was maybe late, 2008, 6, something like that. I started my own company. I moved a totally new geographic location. And took my wife, pulled her away from her family, and I started a company called Aquacure Technologies, which after 6 months we folded shop and headed back home because my wife didn't like the area, and it was a grind, man. And anybody knows entrepreneurship. I mean, you gotta grind. I mean, you gotta try something, figure it out from there, pull it back, adjust it, go back at it again, take the data from that, try, pull back, and you just keep going until you get it. And we didn't have the opportunity to do that because we just realized that wasn't a place that we wanted to be. So that was my first real try at entrepreneurship.
And then you've had also a couple of other ventures. You started some tech companies. You have some software products. So there's so many. You're a true serial entrepreneur. You're never sitting down to do nothing.
Yeah. See, Samuel, what I do is I go put everything through a mission, which is all people are unstoppable to live in the life of their dreams. So all the things I try to do leading towards that, have any businesses I run or whatever the case is, it all is aligned with that mission. And then sometimes I'll start a venture and it's just like, okay, this isn't going the way I thought it would go towards that mission. I'm going to pivot to something else or shut it down or give it to someone else, even sometimes give it away, sell it. There's all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I'm moving in a direction. I look at things as like, I had a friend of mine, I just talked to him the other day. He had 29 failed startups. Okay. I can't complain about anything that I've ever done to him unless I've done it 29 times. But the 30th time he became a billionaire. My thing is, I don't look at businesses like units. I tried this one, it didn't work, or this one did work. I look at the whole body of work as a mission and I'm moving in a direction. And all these different things are parts of that. So my perception of it is different than someone on the outside or some people that normally look at business and gauge people's success based on how many businesses they've won at, how many exits they've had, how much revenue they've done. I'm going in a direction and I don't care what people think.
So obviously starting, like you said, having a mission definitely is what keeps you going, right? Because even when things get hard, if you're actually very focused on the mission, then you're going to stick around and do the hard work. But starting is only part of the equation, but getting it to succeed and grow is a different things. And like you said, there's a lot of challenges that comes along the way. So what are some lessons you learned having built and grown several companies in the last several decades that you've been in the industry?
Yeah, really, I think a couple of the main ones is a clear understanding of where you're trying to go. I don't even like to use the word trying, where you're going. Okay. Clarity. Now that can change, but when you're starting out, you need to know, okay, I need really clear picture of where we're trying to go here. Number one, that one. Number two, having values that you're fully making decisions off of, binary decisions. It's either going towards or away, keeping things simple. And from there, also taking people that are around you and making sure that they align. So one thing I'll tell you, in business, in my personal life, hobbies, whatever, I have my clear mission and values. And what I do is I make sure that my thoughts, my words, my actions, and the environment that I keep, which include people, are all aligned with that mission. And so I don't negotiate with those standards. It's very important. I've done in the past where I didn't do that. And every time I failed, every problem I've ever had in my life is because I was out of alignment in one of those areas.
So can you tell us a little bit practically, how do you even, like a lot of people talk about personal missions, not just the mission and vision for the company. Practically, what does that look like for an individual, especially an entrepreneur with a forward-thinking personality?
Well, first of all, I view success as me trying to get the most out of what I've been given. Okay, my potential, they call it, right? And potential is a moving target. But at the end of the day, there's a gap from where I am to where I could be. And I want to close that and continue to pursue that every day to some degree or increment. And that's success to me. So what did I do is I lined up, I created an acronym to remind myself of what my core values were. And then that acronym carries through to my businesses, which is way more. No, I'm sorry. Way more is another acronym. I have a lot of acronyms. I use acronyms a lot. My core values is vitals. And every letter stands for something, obviously, in an acronym, but vibes matter and emotions are contagious is the first thing. I'm always focused on what are the vibes that I'm giving out? What are the vibes around me? If I'm not feeling it, what's going on? Being really sensitive to it and hyper intentional of observing it. I have a lot of brokenness in my family. And I grew up around a lot of brokenness. So this is a very important thing to me. I noticed that as I was growing up, the energy and the emotions were very contagious in my family's household and my other family, wherever we would go and hang out, right? And I'm talking about like understanding this at like 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 years old in that range. Like, I don't like the vibe here and it's affecting me. And I can go in a room and change the vibe if I want to, right? So I started realizing that. So I carried that through. I is the next letter. I want to go through this. It's very important. I is imagination. Using imagination, endless potential, okay? We've been taught as youngsters, as we've gotten older in life, to stop imagining. We've been beaten up so much. We take hits from all over, whether it's in business, whether it's relationships, friendships, discouragement from people, competitors trying to stomp you out, right? All these things beat us up. And then our imagination starts to like get a little before you have no imagination. So I always want to remind myself that I don't roll, Samuel, I don't know about you, but I don't roll with this earth and what goes on here with the rules. Okay. I'm a spiritual being, and I found that through practice and experience that this is true, that I don't operate based on human beings' limits. So that imagine is a very important part to me. T is take 100% responsibility. I'll fly through these. A is all setbacks are rocket fuel, understanding that everything's good for you. Everything that happens is actually something's good in it. L, leadership starts with me. And S, success is the only option. And again, I'll say define success as where I am to where I'm going and making incremental advances towards that.
Awesome. So you actually have like that framework that you're always pretty much filtering everything that you do, even who you surround with and what actions or things that you decide to do. Are there any things that you're doing to measure? Like, are these things like a black and white, or is there kind of like a continuum? How are you measuring some of these things in terms of, especially like when you talk about success too?
Well, when I talk about binary decisions, towards or away, building, destroying, it seems like they are black and white, right? But what I found is there is no absolutes. There really is no apps. There's always incremental in between the units, right? And I try to do the best I can, man. If I'm unsure of something, I'll say, okay, well, is there a possibility this could go towards my mission? All right, let's try it out. And then let's date, so to speak. So let's just say I'm going to collab with someone. And I'll go and I'll start collabing with someone on a project. Nothing where I'm signing papers, where I'm giving my company away, partnerships, any of that crap, right? It's seriously very easy to get out of if I need to. And I'm observing. I recommend everybody try this. Anytime you get into something, you should be observing, listening, looking, paying attention, assessing, and watching. When I'm talking about my vitals, I watch the person based on those vitals. For example, if I see somebody that's low level of responsibility, they start making excuses. They're not holding up to the end of the bargain or doing what they're saying they're going to do. I had a situation recently. The guy said he's going to pay me for something. He didn't pay me, changed his mind, right? And there was no reason behind it and no explanation. Well, that's low level responsibility. Or we have calls set up and he's supposed to take these calls and they're on the calendar. And then I find out the people are like, well, so didn't show up. And I'm like, what happened? Oh, yeah, I got tied up in something. What do you mean? We have an agreement here. Low level responsibility. Clearly showed that. So I ended that relationship. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any absolutes, but I think it's very easy to observe and pick things up and make decisions. And by the way, it helps you make decisions as an executive or founder of a company. I think it's very important to be not stuck in a indecisiveness.
Obviously, you've said you had the, kind of the start of your early days in, having grown up in a broken family, had like some of those brokenness around, right? And then now you've written a book about rocket fuel, and you're trying to help people go into live up to their full potentials. So can you share a little bit about some of the life lessons that you've learned that helped you to write that the book, and then also that prepare you to be able to help others to be a better leader and better to show up better in their life.
So I came from a broken home. I don't remember my parents ever together. And my dad and mom split up. Obviously, I was doing the every other weekend thing that a lot of people are familiar with. Child support, custody battles. Then you add step parents to the mix and their agendas and interests, which convolutes everything. And then other kids involved that are half or step. And I was the oldest, so I'm experiencing everything. Like some of the younger kids didn't experience everything. I experienced everything that had to do with that, right? And in doing that, I ended up leaving my mom's house when I was about 8 years old to go live with my dad and his new wife. And I thought everything would be great. My mom didn't have financial stability and paycheck, single mom. And I moved with my dad because he had his own business. I looked up to my dad because he was a hard worker. He was a bricklayer. His bricks back behind me. Big forearms, rough hands. If you shook my dad's hand, you could tell he was a hard worker. And, he would go to work if it was nice out Monday through Sunday, man. If it was nice out, he's working. And ball games that I've had or anything, I never saw him at those games. And he just had to work. So one day, after living in the house for 3 years, I started to realize, there was some psychological, mental, verbal abuse going on. And I used to have to hear a lot of fighting and conflict, and it just wasn't good. And I knew as a kid that I was in an environment where the vibes weren't right and I needed to get out somehow. And I didn't know how to do that. So I shared the issue with my mom on a weekend that I was at her house one day. And she said, you don't need to be in that. Are you kidding me? You don't need to be in that environment. I'm going to file court papers to get you out. So one day my dad comes home. I came home from school after waiting for weeks because my mom filed papers. And I came home, my dad was holding these papers. And I didn't know what they were at first. And he said, what's the papers here? It says you want to move in with your mom? Do you understand you have everything you need here? Matter of fact, go to your room. So I went to my room and I sat waiting for my dad, my hero, to come back and confront me. And when he did, he said, I don't understand this. You got everything you need here. You go out to dinner, we go on vacations, I work hard and bust my behind, this and that. Your mother has men coming in and out of the door every day, he's like really gloating it, right? She doesn't have any money. You're going to go down there and this and that. I said, listen, I've made my mind up and I don't want to talk about this. And I'm about 10 or 11 years old at this point. And now my dad was Italian, or I'm Italian, right? And he used to carry, we don't carry wallets, we carry wads of money. And then we have a rubber band around it, And my dad had this wad of money he always carried around with him, always had hundreds, and he would always show me $100 bills. And I thought that was the coolest thing. Well, when I said I didn't want to discuss it anymore, he took out that $100 bill wad, he crumpled one up, and he threw it at me. He said, here, you're going to need this when you're living on the streets with your mother one day. And at that moment, I was like, man, Samuel, like, what did I do? Like, what did I just do? Like, did I blow this up? Like, what are the consequences going to be? I also knew I wasn't leaving that house right away. It had to go through the courts. So now I'm going to have to live in a household and talk about vibes in an environment. And, I was just thinking to myself, like, oh, man, this is going to be hell. And, but the other thing that went through my mind was, you know what? I'm not going to need that money. I'll show you. And here I'm 11 years old. I had no idea how to make money, but I knew that I was going to figure it out. And so for 30 some years, I found myself using that situation as fuel. And through my life, no matter what happened, I found myself after every event that I thought was the end. I don't know if you've gone through some adversity in business or relationships. Oh, this is the end. And the closer in proximity you are to an adversity, the less light at the end of the tunnel, if any. I've felt that many times in my life. But what I did on some recollection or, looking back and everything is I found that every time that happened, I was taking whatever that was, that instance, and I was sticking it in my fuel tank instead of my trunk. Most people keep all the bad stuff in their trunk and it weighs them down and slows them down. I was keeping it in my tank and I was able to convert it into data and information, learning, training, motivation, fuel, rocket fuel to become unstoppable, to live in the life of my dreams. And that's what I wrote about in the book. There's a lot of stories in there about that and a lot of personal development stuff that helps people, entrepreneurship stuff. But this is a great read and it's very easy, big font, you can get through it pretty quickly. But I got Grant Cardone to write the forward for the book because he understood that concept as well. And it's been a great calling card for me.
Yeah. I mean, obviously not everybody has that same sort of a life story, but they all have their own versions of some of those stories. So how do you get people to kind of identify some of those, the setbacks in their life that actually could become the fuel to help them get forward?
Well, it comes down to relatability. See, I'm an authentic person intentionally, a genuine, authentic person. I try to share everything I possibly can. Sometimes it hurts people. My dad's not too happy with me that I shared the story about that, but guess what? I mean, it's 30 some years ago. What do you want me to do? But I think authenticity is huge, and it helps people relate to you. And it doesn't have to be an extraordinary story. It can be just a story of your life. And somebody is going, the less extraordinary your story actually is, the more people can relate to it. Like that single family home or single parent home, that custody battle, like all those broken homes, like 50% of people have been through that. So I think that authentic storytelling is very good. I got tons of stories I could tell you. And that's what really connects people to you.
You've written a book, you've have podcasts, you've been a guest on multiple podcasts, you've been on stages with some reputable names. You obviously run several businesses. So there's so many accomplishments in your life. Of all the things you've accomplished, what's the one thing that you're super proud of?
I think that I got to say it's that I found out who I am. I went through a phase when I was in the mortgage business. I did mortgage and real estate for 20 some years. And in 2018, after building a company for 7 years at that point, the company we built to 8 figures, it all came crumbling down. And what I found out that I was doing, and by the way, when that happened, it was because I didn't have aligned people. I didn't have my core values clear. I was hiring for production. I was coming home miserable, even though we were making money. And what I found was I was attaching my identity to or what I was doing. I was a mortgage guy. I was running a big business. That was me, right? That's not who I was, but I was attaching that identity to it. You'll find this in a lot. Professional athletes or people that play sports their whole life, they identify with being that athlete of that sport. And when that sport goes away, they get lost. So for me, it happened. As the business was up, my identity was up. When it was down, it was here. And I was on a roller coaster ride, ups and downs. That's no way to live life, by the way. So in 2018, I started to realize, wait a minute, I'm branding everything. I'm promoting everything of the business and who I am in the business. And I am this business thing. And when that business goes away, I'm lost. I have no identity. So I said, I'm never going to do that again. I told my wife, I broke down in the kitchen one day. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders at this time. I had 22 employees, lost $1 million+ And I said to myself, and my wife was sitting there, I said, I'm never, ever do this again. And I started peeling back the layers to find out who I am. I started praying. I started trying to really discover C-Roc, right? And that's why from Mike Ciorrocco is my name, but I started branding C-Roc because I found out who I am. And I'm a spiritual being, as I mentioned before, with the values that I mentioned before. And I filter everything through that and I move forward. And then anything that I do business-wise is a vehicle now. I hop in the vehicle, drive the vehicle to where I got to go. If I want to get out of that vehicle, I can. If that vehicle crashes, that's not my identity, as long as I survive it, the crash. But that's changed everything. So I think that's what I'm most proud of, is that I've really figured out my true identity and can move forward in that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big revelation, to be frank, right? Because I think a lot of people don't get anywhere in life because they haven't really realized their full potential or who they are. And like you said, they kind of associate themselves to some business or some other factor that gives them that value.
And I'll tell you something, what's been on my heart lately is to write another book. And I've been trying to figure out what book to, like, what to write it about, what topic. And something is really getting me. And I'm in the promotion business, marketing business. I'm in the business of getting known and becoming omnipresent. But before you do all that, you really have to identify with who you are. Because if not, you're setting yourself up for a big crash later on. And so I got a book idea. And I haven't investigated to see if anybody else has the title like this or anything, but I'm thinking of a book idea called Who Am I? And then writing on this topic of really true identity and the power of identifying who you truly are versus what you do. So this is something that's been on my heart lately, and I'm investigating, and that this might be an exclusive here.
Yeah. I mean, obviously identity has definitely been in question a lot in the recent months, right? There's a lot of people kind of not even sure who they are. So I'm sure there's actually some need for people to read a book like that to come to senses for sure. And I can see some value in it for sure. So you mentioned about omnipresent, and you certainly are helping other entrepreneurs and business leaders to become omnipresent. What do you mean omnipresent?
Well, there's 8 billion people on the earth, right? And I don't think it's important to get known by every single one of those people. One of my mentors, Grant Cardone, is, talks about this famously. He wants everybody on the planet to know him. And that's a noble call, but I don't think it's necessary. And I don't think, well, obviously it's really not possible, but the fact of the matter is if you can get known by the people that matter for your business and your brand and be omnipresent to them, whereas online digitally nowadays, they can't get away from you, whether it's TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, email. They can't get away from you. Television, radio, podcasts, social audio. I can go on and on and on. If there's a way where they go, they see this guy or this gal. Oh my gosh, I can't get away from them. And then to the point where they'll go to their neighbor and say, hey, Jim, do you know Samuel Timothy? This dude's awesome. I listen to his stuff. I read his stuff. And the guy's like, Samuel who? And their neighbor doesn't know who you are. But that guy that knew who you are is like blown away that his neighbor doesn't know who you are because you're so omnipresent. You've taken over headspace, right? And so this is the idea, is to find out who your ideal people are like for your business or brand. Ideal customer profile, they call it ICP, right? Avatar. And then find out where they hang out and find out what messaging will tie into them, and then go use that messaging where they hang out, everywhere they hang out, and be there every single day. Okay, that's the idea. Now, when I decided to do this for myself, I went all in and I documented the process. And then I realized that, you know what, I can go so far impacting this planet, but if I can help other people with missions that align with my mission, that's exponential. And that's where you can really start impacting billions of people, right? It doesn't have to be just you.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit practically, what does that look like? And I mean, it sounds pretty, appealing, right? You want to be where your ideal customers are hanging out, and you want to be always taking headspace in their head so that you can, when they're thinking about buying your product or service, you are the person that they think of. But how do you accomplish that, though? It seems like a monumental task, and there's a lot that has to go behind the scenes to make that happen.
Yeah, so it does seem like a monumental task, but there's a lot of things that are great in life that seem like monumental tasks that we don't shy away from necessarily. Some people do. We go after it anyway. We have unicorns that we're going after in tech, or, that's presidency, right? Like people going for being a president of the United States, a monumental task. It starts with the commitment first, getting clear on what it is that you want, no matter how big it is, committing to that, setting intention. Okay. This is some basic foundational stuff that people skip, and then they wonder why they don't have success. And when I talk about this a lot of times, people are like, I don't want to hear that part. What's the secret? Clarity and intention will lead to a commitment level. When you have this commitment level and intention, your attention starts to be focused on that, whatever that intention's set on. This is the way our minds work, okay? And when that happens, when you pay attention to something, you give it existence. You give it validation, and that's creation. Okay, so when I'm driving down the street in a nice neighborhood, right? And it has really nice architecture. And I'm like, wow, like this stuff didn't just get put here. Somebody put it here, but it started here, right? It started with a thought. And I start thinking about imagination. And I started thinking about, okay, that person had the imagination. They set an intention, committed. They started paying attention, and it started to be created. Okay, so that's the same thing with like any kind of thing that you build or create. That's the formula. Once you have that, though, you take steps towards that direction. Okay, what's the first thing? Well, a lot of times when we're doing these things, Samuel, we have insecurity, so we don't move forward. Well, insecurity stems from a lack of knowledge. And when I found this little concept out that anything I'm insecure about, or I'm not moving fast enough with, or I'm not having the success I think I should be having, it's just because I don't know something. And that gave me so much control. Like, okay, well, where is this information? Who knows it? Where do I got to go to find it? It gives me control. And then I go find that information. And so it's the same thing with getting known and becoming omnipresent. It's like, okay, I know what I want to do. I know there's all kinds of things I need to do. I don't know what to do first. Okay, well, that's just data that you don't know yet. Go find it. And so that's what we do at That One. We help people, whether it's social media, content, podcasting, or what have you. We help them put things in order, tell them what to do and what order to do it in. And what the thing that we found out is, if you do it the way we tell you to, it's not incremental growth that you have. You'll see exponential growth. And so that's the process.
So tell us a little bit. Obviously, you kind of have, like you said, intention, imagination, and you start the creation and the thing that you've described in terms of like how once you start creating it, like you said, becoming omnipresent is part of the equation. But how do you actually turn that into monetization? Like, how do you get people to actually make purchase from you? How do you do that?
So we're assuming that you have a product or service clearly defined, and you know people need it. And if you haven't done that, that's a whole other process, obviously, right? Like proof of concept, MVPs, and all that. But at the end of the day, let's just assume you have something like that. Well, when you have something that's a great product or service, but nobody's ever heard of it, the person that has the same thing you have, but like half the quality, And half the service will kick your ass if they're known more than you. Right. So that's what I guess you start thinking about. Okay, well, when I have that product or service, now I want to start creating an attraction model. And once you start to get known, you create attraction versus chase. Everybody's in this chase mode, chasing sales, chasing employees, customers, whatever. Well, let's just try to start focusing and committing to getting out of the chase mode, knowing how to do it, that we can do it, but we're not having to rely on it, and create attraction. When you start thinking about that, I'm going to create an attraction model. Getting known leads to attraction. And it makes it so much easier, because when you're known, you can set up calls easier. You can market to people easier. Trust is built easier. And this is the most important part, right? What I'm about to tell you. When you start to get known and you have clearly defined values and you start talking through those values, your stories align with those values, your attitude and everything, you will attract the customers that you would rather work with. You see, we don't need everybody. We don't need to work with everybody. And when you have values and you're speaking through those values, the people that don't align with those will be repelled away, which is a good problem. The employees that would come in your company to cause havoc will be repelled away as well. And so that's the process. And then from there, I mean, there's different ways to do it. Obviously, you have email marketing, direct message marketing, there's all different kinds of advertising and marketing you can do. And I can go through offers if you'd like to, and packaging and all that. That gets into a rabbit hole. But as far as Omnipresence, we're getting Omnipresence to create an attraction model and make all the other stuff I just mentioned easier.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like you said, the people that have been used to chasing, they kind of believe that's the only way to get to customers, and then that's the model that they know. But getting them to change their method of thinking and to actually switch over to this attraction model is difficult. So how do you get them to actually understand that there's a new and better way to get in front of your customer, and how you can be omnipresent, and how you can actually get them to come to you as opposed to you chasing them down?
So this is my responsibility, right? Every day I wake up, I pretend that I didn't do anything the day before or the month before, the year before, and I start over again every day as far as my thinking of where I stand in getting this message out. So that's number one. It's just an attitude, a mindset to have with this. But I get out there and I got to scale this business so it's not just me pushing this, okay? And I got to write more books. I got to push more content out. And then I got to build a community, a team of people that feel the same way, and they want to for themselves. Once I establish that for them and they establish for themselves, and they want to help other people, because the people I align myself with, Samuel, they're not all about themselves. They have success for themselves, but then they become an evangelist in how they figured it out, and they share it with people because they want to elevate other people. So that's, to me, that's my responsibility. That's the journey I'm on. And I believe that it's starting to move now, but I believe that as I keep going, I'm going to build so much momentum that this thing's going to explode. And, people are going to really get away from the old fashioned marketing techniques. And we're going to bring authenticity into marketing, where people, it's more relatable, and people are going to just start having a lot more trust and like for the companies that work with us.
How do you measure success in the early days? Because this is definitely a time game, right? This isn't something that you can do overnight to become omnipresent. Like you said, right? You have to create content, be the platforms and places where your ideal customers are, and you have to share that content. And then over time, you're going to become very well known, and you're going to take space in people's mind. But how do you budget time for it in terms of the amount of resources it's going to require to get to see some result and reward off of it?
So first, I think it comes with an understanding that this is a must. It's got to be part of your life and business. It's just got to be part of your life and business, despite the family members, the friends, the coworkers, associates, anybody around you saying, "What are you doing? Like, why are you getting so loud about what you do? Why are you pushing content out? Why?" I've had this happen. I talked about it in my book. Like, people at the golf course that I was a member at, they're like, "Dude, why don't you go back to your podcast? Why don't you go tell that story on your podcast?" Like they throw digs and make jokes about the content that I'm pushing out. And I turn that into fuel. I don't let it stop me. I push harder when I hear that. I push harder 2 times, Samuel. When people discourage me or try to invalidate me or throw digs, I'll push harder. And when the other time I push harder is when I hear people say, "Man, I see you everywhere. You're killing it. You're crushing it." When I hear that, I don't get complacent, because I think you could very easily settle down and like, "Oh, it's working. I'll get complacent." No, I push harder then too. So I'm pushing harder all the time. And but that's the key is realizing that it's got to become part of your life, part of your business. It's a must to go where you're going, because remember, if you have the best product or service in the world and nobody knows it, you're going to get your ass kicked every time by someone that's doing what I'm doing.
You've kind of mentioned in the beginning, you have like this vision, that mission that drives you personally. And then you also have the same for your business. You know where you're going. You have looking at where you're going forward or backwards, right? Like you have some measuring systems in place to be able to do that. But obviously with a lot of things going on, right? Getting on podcasts, running a business and having a family, all of these, writing books. So all of that comes with, demand for your time. So as you entrepreneur, business leader, how do you prioritize your important things, and how do you manage your time really wisely?
Okay, so I believe that we cause and create the life we live. All right, so that understanding right there, instead of saying, well, somebody else creates it and dictates my time, and I got to just follow it. And Mondays I got to go into work, and then I don't get off until X time, because either the company I work for or the employees that I have, my partners, the customers or prospects that I have, that's when they're available. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that. I believe I cause and create things. So I control and create time. And once I started figuring out, like, this is a concept so important. People don't want to hear this stuff sometimes. They're like, no, this isn't the way it is. The way it is the way it is. No, it's not. I promise you. Because what I did was, Samuel, I decided that I wanted to spend time with my family, and I wanted to be around my family, and I wanted to be around my kids' ball games and be there for them and my wife and help out with the house. And I do dishes and I do laundry because I wanted to do my part in the house. Okay, well, what I do is I am intentional with that, and then I structure my schedule and control time. I live off my calendar, and then I assess on a daily basis. How was my day today? Did I reach and talk to enough people? Did I have time in between my calls to not be late to the next call? Did I have time in between my calls to maybe knock something else in the house, knock something that needed to be done in the house, and then get right back to the next call? Did I end my day in time to get to my son's ball game? Like, I assess it, and as you assess, it leads to elevation. I think people don't assess enough. They wait till the end of the year, and then they want to set New Year's resolutions, and they assess the year. I really don't think that, it's conducive to success, not assessing on a daily basis. And then as you go through, obviously, you don't have to get into a whole lot of detail daily. You can do that on a weekly or monthly basis, but each day you should have an idea whether you achieved your goal of controlling time. So to me, that's what it's all about. Causing and creating myself, like knowing that I'm in control of that.
So is it just basically what you allow people to put on your calendar, or when you are willing to meet with people? So you're kind of structuring that into
100%.
how you.
And look, I'm looking at my calendar. Okay. Like, for example, Friday last week, I had 4 calls set up. Fridays are usually lighter for me. I don't do podcasts on Fridays. Decided that already. I blocked it off. The weather was halfway decent, and I knew we're going into the wintertime, and I wanted to golf. And when I go golfing, I golf with people that were just business and networking as well. I didn't think twice about it. I reached out to my assistant and I said, Kim, I need you to reschedule these 4 calls for me. And she's like, okay, what do I tell them? Just let them know there was a scheduling conflict and we have to reschedule. I make a decision of that. I have the right to control my time. Now, if somebody says, screw him, I'm not going to set up a call with him again. That might not be the person I want to deal with anyway, because that just kind of shows the lack of pliability they have.
Understood.
But accountable, able to be counted upon. But if it's a call, it's a call, or something we reschedule, whatever. I weigh those decisions, and I reserve the right to control that.
Understood. And you've mentioned you do that self-assessment. Like, what does that practically look like for you? Kind of assessing whether you're going toward or away from your goal, and whether or not your time is actually being controlled or it's controlling you.
So a couple things. When I lay down at night before I go to sleep, I think about my day. I revisit everything. Okay. Attitude. How was my attitude? How are my thoughts, my words, actions, my behaviors, and the people that I was around today? Do they align? I'll think about it. Okay. And then I also look at my schedule. I can look at my calendar. I'm looking at it right here in front of me on this laptop. I look at my calendar. Like, how was my day? Was it stacked? Did I have enough in it? Was there too much emptiness? What if I did have a white space on the calendar? What did I do with that time? Like, did I read? Did I knock out some things? Like, I'm just observant and intentional with it. And by the way, I haven't always been like this. It's only been in the last, I'm embarrassed to say this, in the last 5.5 years, 5.5 years. Prior to that, I was living at the seat of my pants. Chaos, confusion, ups and downs, had success, but it was not stable. And I didn't feel good. I was always in anxious mode. And so here's the thing. You're either going to control time. You're either going to control energy, the people around you, the world that you live in. You're either going to control it or it's going to control you. You have a decision to make. And once I made a decision, I got this, then everything changed.
Yeah, some real life lessons too. Like I think it's actually very admirable that you're admitting that you've been able to do this in the last 5 years. But I think that's still a great success, right? Like even for having that habit to be developed and living with it for 5 years, sometimes it's not that easy to do so.
Yeah, well, that and
Um,
that leads to the shows why I've had so much success in a short time. 5 years is a short period of time. I've been able to exponentially grow my brand, my business, and the things that I'm doing because I figured these things out.
and you're much more focused and intentional, like you said earlier too. Like if you have intentional, you're focused, you're creating, and not just like you're seeing things, right? Because you're very focused on what you're actually wanting to accomplish.
You ever have
So
somebody in your life every day that you had to see or deal with, and you felt like you're stuck and you have to do it, and it's just like, and you stuck in this present time problem of thinking like this is I gotta put up with this, and you're doing, but really you really should be thinking about, okay, if I'm feeling like this and life is so short, I need to figure out not how to put up with it, but I need to figure out how to get rid of it. And most people don't do that. They don't confront it. They just try to
yeah,
make do with it. And there's no requirement of that.
yeah, and that hold them back from getting ahead, because a lot of those things are roadblocks as opposed to helping them grow. Certainly a valid point there. So obviously you've learned a lot in these years, right? Like even from some of your stories that you've shared from your younger days. Knowing what you know today, what advice would you give the younger C-Roc?
This changes often, but I think that the most important thing is to simplify things, get rid of chaos and confusion, and really identify binary decisions. I mean, either going towards or away, building or destroying. And then the other one that I would add to that is, as my income grew incrementally, I should have kept my lifestyle down where it was and taken money and just loaded up money in investments, and made my life easier now. But in the other hand is, if I would have did that, I don't know that I would have learned some of the lessons that I've learned today. So I think I would have teach that lesson, and I would say those to the things. But like, the more I think about it, I don't know that I would change that for myself, because I may not be the man I am today because like if I had that knowledge back then. Does that make sense?
Yeah, some great lessons there. That was kind of my questions too. Is there any regrets, and would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think the regrets I have, when it comes up, and I don't like to say that they're regrets, but if there were, I wouldn't have did the drugs that I did and partied when I was in my 20s. I mean, I partied and had a good time, and they were good times, but it did get dark. It always gets dark when you get into drugs and alcohol, and that part, I kind of wish I changed. But again, now it's just going forward. It's just full forward motion into being the best version of myself I can be to inspire others.
Yeah. Is there any final parting wisdom for other entrepreneurs and business leaders?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, I just want to encourage everybody, find out who you are, not what you do, but find out who you are, right? And be that one. Unapologetically lean into it. Let your light shine. There's a song in Sunday school in the Christian faith, and some of you might know it. It says, "This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine." Right? Like, I think so many people have a light and it gets burnt out. And it's just sad to see. I want people just to be unapologetically themselves, authentic, genuine, and live the life to the fullest. And that's what I'm going to continue to do myself, and I want to encourage others to do.
Awesome. What a great a note to kind of end our conversation. I certainly appreciate your time, and thank you for sharing your life lesson with our audience.
Appreciate you, Samuel.
If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.